Welcome back to Unchained, Hope and Healing from Addiction. Last night, we learned about the first breakthrough we must have in order to experience an unchained life. And tonight, we're going to continue the journey and learn the next step necessary to experience freedom. But first, we want to make sure that everybody's registered. Please go to the website on your screen. Go to unchainedevent.org/Bryant/register. Everyone's information is completely confidential and will only be used during this series and to inform you of future events. Once you've registered, you will receive an email or text each day reminding you of what the evening's presentation is. With the daily reminder, you will also receive a link before that evening's presentation. Click on that link and you will be entered for our nightly giveaway. So if you've already registered, you should have received a link today. Make sure you click on that link to be entered into the giveaway tonight. You only have to register once, but to be entered into that evening's presentation, make sure you click on the link. Each night we'll be giving away a signed copy of our speaker, Richie Halversen's book, The Darkness Will Not Overcome. But you do have to click on that day's link in order to be registered. This lets us know who is joining us on this particular night. So if you have not registered yet, make sure you do so right now at the link on your screen, unchainedevent.org/Bryant/register. Now, last night we had people join us from all over, and we would love to hear from you where you're joining us from again tonight. Please write wherever you're joining us from in the comments section of this live stream. We want to hear from you. Whether you're joining us on YouTube or Facebook, please make sure you hit the like button and share button. Everyone struggles with addiction on some level, and we all know someone who either struggles with addiction or we know someone who knows someone who struggles with addiction. So please help us get the message out. Tonight, Lane Buttrum is joining us to share his story on how he became unchained. Welcome, Lane.
Thank you.
Glad to have you with us here and willing to share your story. Tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe even before your addiction.
Okay, sure. I grew up right here in this area where we are now, in Bryant. I came to this church my whole entire life. I went to our church school. I participated in the youth events that we had going on here. So I was raised in a very Christian and conservative home. We didn't believe in any of the things that came into my life later on. I went to our denominational schools all the way from kindergarten through my second year of college. But unfortunately, even in this fairly sheltered community that I grew up in, there's still influences from the outside that make their way in. And by the time I had left high school, I had already been exposed to marijuana and alcohol, and had started to periodically participate in those activities with some friends of mine that were not from the church. I proceeded into pharmacy school at Auburn after I left the college here in the area, and the people that I hung out with once I went to school there were on a whole other level. I mean, they were really interested in about every kind of narcotic drug that you can think of. And so I was wanting to be part of the group, so I went ahead and participated in some of that stuff. And it turns out that I ended up having a really high affinity or love for opiate painkillers, which, you might think that's ironic with me going into pharmacy school that I would get involved with that while I was still training to be a pharmacist, but that is how it worked itself out. And by the time I graduated with my doctor of pharmacy degree, I was in the full throes, I would say, of opiate addiction. And I practiced as a pharmacist as a functioning addict and a pharmacist for 12 and a half years. And I realized that it was starting to get to be a problem when the amount that I had to take to maintain my level of comfort, I guess you'd call it, had gotten to the point where even I realized that it was getting out of hand. But by that time, I couldn't quit. I was in full-blown addiction. My body wouldn't let me quit. I tried 100 times to stop on my own using various methods, and I could not.
What are some of the things that you tried that just didn't work?
Well, I tried cold turkey several times, and by the second or third day, without having any opiates in my system, I was physically sick. I was nauseous. I was chained to the bathroom. I couldn't even leave the house. I was just miserably sick. And so I was like, well, somebody had told me that some of the Robitussin cough gels, were a slightly modified form of an opiate, to take the euphoria away, but still have the other benefits of it to help suppress cough and things of that nature. So I tried taking those. Well, I tried taking so many of those that I started getting the jerks and the shakes and uncontrollable muscle movements, and I was like, well, that's terrible. I can't do that either. And so I gave up. I gave up trying to quit. And after I'd lost my, or I'd let my pharmacy license lapse because I just couldn't continue working under those conditions. I was having to buy opiates on the street, and a friend of mine was suffering from opiate addiction and was coming over to buy some of the pills that I would buy on the street to help kind of minimize my cost that I was having to put out. I was on unemployment at the time, which was a terrible thing to say. You're using government funds to fuel your addiction, but that was happening at that time. And so she introduced me to methamphetamines. Well, that was the first thing that had ever taken the withdrawal symptoms for the opiates away from me. I mean, it cured it in a week. I was like, man, this is a miracle, but it's not a miracle because, you were just trading one addiction for another, and methamphetamine addiction will lead you to do some things that you would never in your life believe that you would do.
Yeah.
I started stealing. I was doing all kinds of low things, to further my addiction. And I knew I needed to stop. And even at that point in time, I would still pray periodically, even, when I was addicted to meth. And, but I was primarily praying for protection from the law. I wasn't praying for help with my addiction. I was praying that I wouldn't go to jail. Well, the Lord knows what He's doing because, He had me have several run-ins with the police, but I never got arrested. I would always just talk with them, and they'd be satisfied with what they came to look for and go on their way. Well, it finally got to the point where I was arrested and put in jail, and that was very humbling for me. Well, losing my pharmacy license was very humbling, and then going to jail was another humbling experience. And I think that the Lord knew what He was doing there as well, because He needed me to be brought to a point where there was nothing left for me of my own power to do. I could do nothing. When you're in jail, you do what they tell you, when they tell you, you eat when they say, you get up when they say. Everything that you do when you're in jail is dictated by somebody else, and that's very humiliating to somebody that grew up free and able to do what they wanted to do whenever they wanted to. But I was able to get a copy of, it was a paperback New International Version Bible, and I started reading the Bible while I was in jail, and I started praying daily. And it got to the point where other inmates noticed that I was praying, and there were a couple other believers that were in jail there with me, and so we started a prayer group. And that was really encouraging, and plus I was regaining my relationship with the Lord, which I hadn't had for years. And so I was actually in trouble in 2 different counties, and so once my time was done in the first jail, I was transferred to the next jail that I had to do some time in as well. And by that time I had read enough in the Bible and had a pretty decent grasp on what it was that most people wanted to know about from the Bible, which was the gospel, and then some other more specific questions.
Now, were you still struggling with your addiction at this point still?
Well, I still had access to, on occasion, I had access to marijuana and tobacco while I was in jail. And so, you know, I would occasionally participate in that. But other than that, I mean, if I tell you I wasn't wanting to be out where I could, you know, have freer access to cigarettes and some form of intoxicant, I'd be lying. Because, yeah, even though I was coming back to a place where I was getting to know the Lord again, you know, I still was feeling like I was needing something to make me feel better, I guess was the best way to put it. But so I was helping lead Bible studies in the county jail when my time was up and I was able to get out. And so I went straight from the jail to the corner store and bought a pack of cigarettes. Was my first act when I got out of jail. So I mean, obviously, I was still had the addict mindset because, you know, they say once an addict, always an addict. You know, which I don't necessarily buy into that philosophy. However, that's a term I've heard on the street a lot. So once I got out, I knew that following the illicit drug pathway was no longer viable for me because were I to get in trouble again, I was going to go to prison for 10 years, and I really didn't feel inclined to go down that road. So I was like, well, I can't do that, so what can I do? Well, I guess I can smoke and I can drink, you know, and there's no laws against that. So, I mean, that's where my next focus fell, was drinking alcohol. I mean, at first I claimed it was socially, you know, because I wouldn't drink a whole bunch. But by the time I had been out for about 2 years and had moved out away from here again and was living with a girlfriend, my alcoholism had progressed to the point where I was drinking anywhere from a third to a half of a 2-liter bottle of vodka a day by myself and smoking somewhere on the order of about a pack of cigarettes a day. And it wasn't helping. I mean, things were just progressively getting worse. My relationship started to fall apart. My physical health was getting worse. But the worse things got, the more I drank, it seemed. And I was like, man, this isn't adding up exactly. But at the same time, the Lord really started, I mean, he was really poking me at this point. He's like, listen, what are you doing? And I started feeling impressed, you know, that he was really trying to get my attention. And so
where did things finally just click to, like, you know what, I really need a different path?
Well, I started feeling, oddly enough, impressed that Sabbath keeping was something that I had been taught all my life and that I had not been observing. So I went to my employer and I said, listen, I feel like that I'm being impressed by the Lord to, you know, to go back to keeping the Sabbath. I hadn't quit smoking, I hadn't quit drinking, but I would put on, for those of you that don't know what it is, the Hope Channel is an Adventist programming on satellite dish, and I had access to it. So I'd watch Hope Channel on Sabbath when I wasn't working, and I started playing religious music on our music system at the house there. And I would just sit there on the couch, and when those songs would play, it'd touch me in my heart. And so I'd just sit there and I'd cry. And the Lord was like, you know you need to come back to me. And I was like, yes, Lord, I do. I know. But I was still resisting, you know. I mean, I wasn't interested in quitting smoking, and I wasn't interested in quitting drinking. So I just prayed. I said, Lord, if you want these things taken away from me, you're going to have to change me. But I will make a deal with you. I was like, if things don't change or if things continue to get worse, by February the 12th of year before last, then I'm going to just pack up and move back home. Well, things continued to get worse exponentially, as it would seem. So I took that as my sign. I was like, okay, Lord, I hear you. You've answered me in the way I asked you to. So I moved back home, and I started coming back to church, and I told our small group, our Sabbath school group, that what I was struggling with, and they prayed over me. My parents prayed over me. But I had made the decision. I said, Lord, if this is what you want me to do, you're going to have to take it away from me. And within 2 months, I would say it's about all it took. I was completely not drinking anymore. I wasn't smoking anymore. And it wasn't because I did it. It was because the Lord took those things, the desire for those away, because there was no way I was going to be able to change it on my own.
That's awesome.
I mean, it was truly a miracle.
That's awesome. So how do you stay connected to God? How do you allow him to continue to lead?
Well, like I said, I'd started to reestablish my relationship with the Lord when I was in jail, but that passage in Matthew that says, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God," I took that as him speaking to me directly, and not only just making that a priority in my life, but to make it a priority in every single day. And so when I open my eyes in the morning, the first thing I do is I pray and ask the Lord to lead me through my studies, and then I get up and I read 2 devotional books and my lesson study for the day, and all the scriptural passages that are associated with all of those readings, which requires me to get up an extra hour early every day, but I've been doing that faithfully for the past year and a half. And even when I have bad days, they're way better than my good days when I wasn't doing that. So I mean, that is a second miracle, really, in my view.
How much did humility play?
Well, at least for me, I don't know how it is for everybody, but in my case specifically, I had to be brought to a point where I was shown in no uncertain terms that you have no power, you have no say. And when you're brought to the point where you have to put it all in somebody else's hands, it's very humiliating, but it's also a chance for personal reflection, and it reinforces the fact that you need a higher power to intervene, because you are no longer in control.
So how long have you been free now, Lane?
I have been free. Let's see. I moved back on February the 13th. It was the 12th and 13th. I had to take 2 days to move, but I got back here a year and a half ago, and I've been free and clear of alcohol, tobacco, and all other intoxicants since the end of March of last year. So whatever that adds up to, it's almost exactly a year and a half if I did the math right. But
that's awesome.
That's pretty great. I couldn't be happier.
How much of a role does your support system have for that?
For me, it was very important, because I did not feel like I was alone. I didn't feel that I was having to face it by myself or just with me and the Lord. I mean, the Lord gave me a set of 2 very loving parents and a very loving and accepting church family, and without those, it would have been really tough. I mean, I don't think I would have been able to do it.
If you had to share one more thing with our audience here this evening that may be helpful for them in their walk, what would that be?
The thing that I keyed in on, well, if I can make 2 suggestions.
Sure.
One of them is to admit that you are powerless and that you need another power to step in and help you. And the second thing would be to make God a priority. I mean, make it a point to spend time with Him every day, because if you just take a day or 2 off, you'll take forever off. So don't quit. Don't stop. Don't, like Richie says, don't give up 5 minutes before the miracle.
Thank you so much, Lane, for sharing with us this evening. Don't forget to write your questions for Lane in the comment section of this video, because as soon as Richie concludes his message for us tonight, we will be back for Lane to answer some of those questions that you have. And at this time, Richie Halversen is going to share with us the next breakthrough we need to begin living an unchained life.
Welcome to Unchained, Hope and Healing from Addiction. You know, it's not easy to break the chains that hold us back. It doesn't happen overnight. But if we work it, it works. That's a saying that I would often hear in the program. Keep coming back. It works if we work it. So far in our series, we've seen how each of us have chains that hold us back, something keeping you from living life to its fullest. The same power and principles that broke through my chain of opioid addiction can break through yours. Whatever is holding you back. But we've got to break through the denial and get honest. We've got to get real. We've got to say, you know what, I need help. We also have to believe that help is possible. Because without hope, a miracle cannot happen. We've got to be open-minded. We've got to believe there is something bigger, stronger than us that can. Step 1, I can't. Step 2, he can. Step 3, I'll let him. Now that we have a hope that a miracle can happen, it's time to step out in faith. People have asked me, what is the difference between belief and faith? So we learned about belief last time. So if I move to a town and a friend of mine tells me a good mechanic and I go to them and I say, hey, I'd like this to get fixed. I believe, because of what my friend told me, that I can take my car to this mechanic and he'll do a good job. However, if I take my car to him and he does do a good job, the next time I bring it back, then it's not belief or hope, it's faith. I know that he's going to do a good job. Now that we have hope a miracle can happen, it's time to step out in faith. Faith is the manifestation of belief and trust in God. James 2:20 says faith apart from works is useless. It doesn't do us any good. James 2:26, as the body apart from the spirit is dead, so also faith apart from works is dead. James 2:18 in the Message, faith and works fits together hand in glove. James 2:14, what good is it if you say you have faith but don't show it? Can that kind of faith save anyone? So if you want to live an unchained life, you have to start living what you say you believe. That's what faith is. We have an excellent example of faith in the 5th chapter of John. So we've looked at the 3rd chapter, we've looked at the 4th chapter, and now we're going to look at the 5th chapter. In the 5th chapter, we have this guy, and he's laying by a pool. John 5:2-6. Now there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool in Aramaic called Bethesda, which has 5 roofed colonnades. In these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been there in a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" Now at first it seems like a pretty stupid question. Do I want to be healed? Well, what do you think? Verse 5 says he had been there in the same sick state for 38 years. I wonder, how many years have you been in the same state that you're in right now? How many years are you going to just feel drowned by the debt? How many years are you going to feel chained by circumstance and problems? How many years are you going to be chained to a dysfunctional and toxic relationship? For 38 years, this man has been coming to the pool only to leave the same way he showed up. How many seminars are you going to go to on anger and still leave the same way you showed up? How many classes on forgiveness do we have to go to finally have a breakthrough? Now, some translations say, do you want to be healed? Others say, do you want to be well? But my favorite says, do you want to be whole? The Greek word isn't just talking physical, it's talking spiritual, it's talking emotional. We are physical, emotional, mental, spiritual beings. And whenever one of those elements are out of whack, we don't feel the fullest, we don't live to the fullest of our potential. Man, God's number one goal for us has always been wholeness. Which is why when you ask God for help, I've noticed something. He'll always go deeper than you really want him to go. At first, I just wanted some help with a drug problem. But then he kept digging and digging because you see, the drugs were only a symptom of a much bigger, deeper problem. Just being drug-free won't give you wholeness. Have you ever heard of the term a dry drunk? a dry drunk, they're just as miserable and mean as before. They're just without drinking. In fact, most of the time, a dry drunk is so miserable to be around, the people that live with them wish they would go back to drinking. Anything short of wholeness isn't enough. You see, until you feel completely unchained, you'll never feel and experience life to its fullest potential. And so in verse 3, it says, there were a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. Just as there was a variety of problems at this pool, there are a variety of problems that all of us are facing in our lives. Some of us have money problems. Some of us have marital problems. Some of us have health problems. Some of us have job problems. Some of us have drug problems. Some of us have eating disorders. Some of us have bad attitude problems. And like this broken man, what we often do is we look at a pool and we think, if I could just get that, everything would work out. If I could just get the degree, everything would work out. If I could just get more money, everything could work out. If I could just get married, everything would work out. If I could just get unmarried, everything would work out. But those things won't give you wholeness. Jesus asked, do you want to be whole? Not, do you want to get married? Not, do you want to be rich? Because to give you those things wouldn't be nice. It would be torture, because then you would believe that those things can give you wholeness, that they can make you happy, and they can't. Do you want to be whole? And the sick man answered, well, I have no one to put me into the pool. That's the wrong answer. The pool won't give you wholeness. Popularity won't give you wholeness. Pay raise won't give you wholeness. A good waistline won't give you wholeness. A new spouse won't give you wholeness. Only an experience with something bigger, better, and more powerful than that stuff will give you wholeness. You see, the legend of this story and the legend during this time was that if you got in the water at just the right time, when it moved, that you would be healed. But you know what? You would think that at some point over 38 years, this guy would have realized, you know what? I don't think it works. I've been here for 38 years, and I've never seen anybody healed by this pool. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. How many times do you have to go to the dope to realize that the dope doesn't work? How many times do you got to go to that website to realize, you know what? It's not worth the shame that I'm going to feel. How many times are you going to realize that the worrying never works, money never works, arguing never works, complaining never works? But this is the thing, God is offering something that works right now. Like with the paralytic, Jesus is asking each of us, do you want to be whole? The English Standard Version calls them invalids. The King James Version calls them impotent. It's a word that means ineffectual, inadequate, useless. In a Greek word, it means weak, sickly. But you know what? Think of some of the amazing people in history that have had disabilities. Helen Keller and Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles. You've got so many different people that didn't allow their disability to define them or their circumstance to stop them. And so there's got to be more than physical disability here. You see, I believe the greatest obstacle to their wholeness, to being unchained, wasn't physical, but it was spiritual. It was emotional. It was a lack of faith. It wasn't a lack of their health. It was a lack of their belief, their faith. And the sick man answered, sir, I have no one to put me into the pool, and the water is stirred up, and while I'm going, another steps down before me. And you see, he's blaming other people for his current situation. It's always easier to blame someone else for what's wrong with you, but you've got to take responsibility for your own life. You can't blame anyone else. No one is getting between you and wholeness but you. We can't blame anyone else for our chains. And look, we may not be responsible for everything that happens to us in life, but we are responsible with how we respond with what happens to us in life. And so here we have Jesus, this miracle worker, the resurrection and life. He's touched people and healed them. The blind see, the disabled walk, the mute can talk, the deaf can hear. He's standing right in front of this guy asking, do you want to be whole? And this guy brings up a pool. He's looking past Jesus. Hey, Jesus, could you move over? I need to keep an eye on the pool and make sure nobody gets in there before me. You see, his faith is weak, not his legs. His faith, not his legs, are what's coming between him and wholeness. He's so focused on his present dilemma, he can't see the solution staring at him in his face. In John 5:6, I love it. It says, Jesus already knew that he had been there for a long time. You see, your marriage needs help. God already knows. Your body needs healing. God already knows. You have a spending problem. God already knows. He knows how long you've been where you are, and he knows how long you've been going through what you're going through. Even when we don't know what to do, God already knows. Do you want to be whole? And the sick man answered, Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool. Jesus just cuts him off and he gets to the point. Get up, take up your bed, and walk. You see, the principle of faith is the getting up. You have to get up. This guy wasn't healed until he got up. Information alone won't lead to transformation. You can go to seminar after seminar. You can go through this whole series. Information alone won't lead to transformation. Information plus participation, that equals transformation. You've got to participate in the unchaining experience. You've got to participate in this process. It works if and only if we work it. Faith is living what you have learned. It's putting your life in God's hands and trusting Him. If it works when you work it. The moment the paralytic practiced what he heard, the chain of paralyzation was broken in his life. Someone who's been stuck for 38 years is moving. But the question to you is, will you trust Him enough to just get up right now? Maybe you don't know what you believe. Maybe you don't even know if there is a God. Will you just give it a chance? Would you just give it a try to see if there's something to it? Ephesians 2:4-6 says, But God, being rich in mercy because of the great love with which He loved us, even when we were dead in our trespasses, made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved. And check this out, verse 6, and raised us up with Him. Get up. And seated us with Him in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus. I don't know about you, but I want to raise up today. This message is for people who are ready to rise up. This series are for people who are done rolling over and giving up. Stop letting your addiction chain you. Stop letting the past paralyze you. Stop letting haters get inside your head. Do you want to be whole? At the end of this scene in John 5:8, it says that the Jews were seeking all the more to kill Jesus. When Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead in John 11:53, it says from that day on, they made plans to put Him to death. So think about this. Every miracle Jesus performed was a death sentence for Jesus. He knew what healing this man would cost. He knew that to make this man's legs move meant that his own legs would need to be nailed to a cross and could not move. For this man to be able to pick up his bed and walk, he would have to pick up his cross and walk. The only way to give wholeness was if he went into the grave and died. To break your chains, Christ's body was broken. That's how much God loves you. Listen, no one else has ever done that for you. No one has ever done what God has done for you. So why not trust Him when He says, get up? Why don't you give Him a chance? Do you want to live an unchained life? Do you want to be whole? The question is coming through to each of us right now. And there's only one real good answer. Yes, I want wholeness. Well, then you got to get up. You got to make the decision right now to get up. What you've been doing hasn't worked. So why not try something new?
Thank you for the message again, Richie. It is now time for our Q&A, and I'm here with our guest, Lane Buttrum, and he would love to answer a couple of your questions. If you have not had a chance yet to post your questions, please do so in the chat right now. So Lane, the couple questions came in. Viewers wanted to ask you. How do you think the role that your parents played in all your struggle made a difference in your recovery process?
Well, it was a big factor, I would say. They never abandoned me. They never gave up on me. However, they did show me some tough love. When I was put in jail, they told me that they loved me and they wanted the best for me, but they were not getting me out. Whatever consequences that I'd brought upon myself, that I was going to have to deal with those. But they would still be there to support me, and they were. I mean, they put money on the phone so that I could call and talk to them once or twice a week. They put money on my commissary books so that I could order, food and snacks, and have at least some semblance of things that I'd enjoyed in the outside world. But they weren't going to be responsible for any of my fines or any of my bail or any of those things, which I had no way of providing for myself. It was just live in the moment and understand what you've done and learn how to deal with it. But the fact that they were there, that I could talk to them, and that they would always be encouraging and stuff, even in light of where I was at. Even my son came to visit me, on my birthday when I was in jail, and that was big too. I mean, it showed me that they still love me. They just didn't agree with the choices that I'd made.
So how do you continue to stay addiction-free?
Well, it's kind of a multi-pronged approach. I have increased my level of activity in the church. I've completely changed the environments that I go to. I don't go to any of the places I used to go to. I don't hang out with the same people that I used to hang out with that would encourage me to do those things. And I have a specified time that I spend with the Lord every single day. I mean, I can't really stress that enough. I mean, a daily walk with the Lord means exactly that. It doesn't mean that, you just have a random thought, okay, I'm thinking about you right now, Lord, that type of thing, whatever, pray periodically. I mean, those are good. But man, if you don't set aside a specific time and allotted time to spend time with the Lord, you'll fall away. It's so important that you do it every day.
Very nice, very nice. Thank you so much, Lane, for joining us this evening. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Taking the time out for us. Those were some great questions that you guys asked here of Lane. Thanks again, Lane. Now let's see who our winner is for the drawing tonight. Our winner is Sabrina Pemberton. Let's congratulate Sabrina in the comments, and Sabrina will be contacting you so we can be able to get this book to you. And remember, to be entered into each night's drawing, you need to register at unchainedevents.org /Bryant/register. You will get a daily email or text message with a link before the program. Click on that link and you'll be entered into that evening's giveaway. Now, I don't know about you, but I have been richly blessed this evening by Richie and Lane's testimony. Don't forget to join us tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. Central Time when we'll look at our next breakthrough in living an unchained life. We'll also be joined by Allison. She is going to share her story of how she has broke free from the chains that once held her back. Have a good evening and God bless.